Algebra 2 skills number 49, measures of dispersion. So dispersion means spread, and standard deviation is one of the main measures you're going to see, one of several measures you could see that measures spread. It's all about this, how far apart the numbers are. It has nothing to do with the size of the numbers. And whereas you're usually going to calculate this on the calculator, it is good to do one or two by hand just to get an appreciation of where it comes from and kind of get an understanding of what it is. So several steps to calculate involves the mean. First find that, and then again, how far apart are they? So you're going to subtract each number from the mean. This is called deviations. You're going to square those, add those up, and then depends on if you're taking the population standard deviation or sample standard deviation. There's a difference between the two that'll be explained more in the stats course, but usually it's the population standard deviation, but you're going to divide by different numbers depending on, and this n just means how many you have. So if you have 5 numbers, in this case you divide by 5 for the population, but 4 for the sample, and then you take the square root at the end. So here's an example. We'll keep it a short list just because it gets long and tedious if you get too big a list. But you're going to find the average of those numbers, 7. You're going to subtract every number. And it doesn't matter what order you go. You might have some people tell you to put the mean first. It doesn't matter because these deviations here are going to be squared on the next step anyway. It makes them all positive. So square them so they're all positive regardless of what order you subtracted. Now you're going to add those up. And then we're doing the population standard deviation here, so you divide by n. That means 4. There's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then take the square root. So 3.67 is the population standard deviation. And notice the symbol. It was printed on the previous slide, but I didn't say anything about it. This is a lowercase sigma. Looks like a little boy wearing a hat, but that's the symbol for that. S with a little x is the sample standard deviation, if you ever use that. Here's a stats menu that has those same 2 symbols right here. Notice the population standard deviation almost always is a little smaller than the sample because you're dividing by a larger number. But those are the 2 numbers there. And then other numbers that you'll see in other videos here, but this is the standard deviations. Variance is also a number that is used, and again, there's a purpose for that. It'll be explained more in the stats course, but variance is just the square of the standard deviation, and you have the range, which is something you learn very early. Some folks just say the range is the minimum to the maximum, and they leave 2 numbers, but it's actually a calculation. You take the max and subtract the min. So example there, same list. And since we already did the standard deviation, you just square that. Or if you're calculating the standard deviation, or on the way of calculating the standard deviation, just don't take the square root at the end, and that's the variance. So 13.5 in this case. Again, there's a purpose for why you have 2 different numbers that you'll learn in a stats class. And the range is just the maximum minus the minimum.